Good morning. Good morning. I'm Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights. And we're going to stick this in the front of our show today because we've got some technical difficulties. And I just want to make sure that you hang in there and watch and listen to the show. You won't have to look at my pretty face. But we're talking with Dylan Quarles, and you'll see him, and he's the important part in this. So stay tuned, and here it goes. Thanks. This morning we've got Dylan Quarles with it. Dylan James Quarles is how you write. Isn't that right, Bean?
Yes, yes.
Good morning, Dylan.
Good
And
morning.
we were just talking. He's on my side of the Puget Sound, which I think that makes you the
All
first
right.
author over on this side I talked to. Yeah, and thank you for joining us for sure.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Now I'm going to jump right into with a question of how did you get into writing?
Well, I was I went to school for film, to college, and I really enjoyed filmmaking a lot. When I graduated college, I made a lot of short films in college. I had a whole crew of people I like to work with. A lot of it we did on our own, like independent of our studies. And we would hold a premiere and we would, advertise it and all that. I really enjoyed that process, but when I graduated college, I lost my creative network, because I went out into the world, and you can't just go down, in your apartment complex or in your dorms and go down the hall and knock on the door of the guy you've heard likes to make prosthetics or whatever. You gotta you're on your own. So I found myself just sort of out in the wild. I was teaching English in South Korea. I started getting kind of antsy creatively, so I just began to write as a means to continue telling stories cinematically. And then I realized that that was the style I wanted to develop as a writer. And then also it became freeing too, because I didn't suddenly have things like budgetary constraints, or maybe that guy who makes prosthetics down the hall isn't around anymore. And so you have to rewrite the thing or whatever. It's like you could just
Change the
write,
program.
you
Yeah.
just tell the story how you want to tell it. Like there's no budget on a novel. The budget is as big as your imagination wants to go. The time limitations are as much time as you can dedicate to writing. So, shifted from movie into writing, and put out my first novel in, I want to say 2011 or 2012 thereabouts. And the reception of it was I was so well received by readers, that it just sort of like pushed. I always kind of held a space for filmmaking, but with The Ruins of Mars, which was that first novel, and then the reception for the subsequent two follow-ups, it just sort of like filmmaking just kind of got pushed to the side, because it was like, okay, this is what is happening right now. This is what's working, and this is what people are enjoying, and this is what I'm enjoying. And I really grew to truly love that independent creativity in a way that I never thought I would, because I'd come from such a collaborative creative space originally. So
Yeah. Now, your Ruins of Mars, that's a trilogy: Ruins of
yeah.
Mars, Waking Titan, and Eye of the Apocalypse.
Yep.
Now, how did you reach your readership? You said you had a great response from them. How did you get out to them?
Well, I mean, it's some of it's luck. It was the early days of it was sort of still the early days of online, or independent publishing,
Hmm.
self-publishing. Um, so that I think it wasn't just as inundated as it is now. I think it's harder to break through the noise now, possibly. The timing was a huge thing, though. This is the luck part of it. Well, I'm gonna give myself some credit. People like the way the story was told. They like the fact that it, doesn't do exactly what you think it's going to do, subvert expectations, all these things. But it's a novel about finding ruins on Mars, as the title would suggest. It was set in the not too distant future. So we're not doing like we're doing sort of a little mix of hard sci-fi. But at that time, right when the novel came out, we had the Curiosity rover was touching down.
Hmm.
We had Andy Weir's The Martian was blowing everybody's mind in terms of
Absolutely.
another self-published super sensation. And then the film was slated to come out. So there was previews, and there was Mars was on the mind, if you could,
So
you
again,
know,
your timing was good. You keyed
really
in with
good.
the yeah.
Hmm.
That
And
is important. Yeah.
yep, yep. And then with the reviews
Hmm.
helped big in a big way. I think I ran a promotion early in the book's release, giveaway, and I didn't know what to expect because I was really wet behind the ears with all of it. And something like, I want to say something like, it went like 1700 downloads in a day, and then the next day it was like 2,400, and it was like flying off the shelf. And then a lot of those people then turned around and came back and gave positive reviews
Hmm.
because they had enjoyed this novel that they got for free, and they were kind enough to take the time to, just like you mentioned to your listeners, subscribe, like, rate, and review. All these
Hmm.
things help with these algorithms and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
that really helped, I think, position me. And then when the next two novels came out, Amazon was rolling out their, they were fine tuning their side of things, which was like, if you bought one book in the series, they would email you when the next one came out. So it's like the first day Waking Titan came out, it had a slew of sales because all these
Wow.
people that had bought or downloaded it got an email saying, "Hey," and so then they went and clicked the link, and there it went. So yeah, it just picked up momentum and kept going.
Yeah, because you have hundreds of reviews, which isn't necessarily common for self-published, indie published
It's
authors.
tough. Yeah, it's tough
It's
to
really
scratch
tough.
those reviews. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's an amazing thing because yeah, I got good reviews too, but not hundreds of hundreds. I mean, you've got a lot of reviews. Congratulations. That is
Thank
an
you.
accomplishment all by itself. In fact, you got your BIBA award,
Yeah,
BIBA, for over 100,000 books downloaded. 100,000. Wow.
that's crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
That
And
is
the Bibba
crazy.
was, yeah, that was a neat little milestone as well. And yeah, it's just been a crazy ride. And it's not done yet.
That's true. So that's your trilogy, The Ruins of Mars. You've
Yeah.
also got a book out there, more recent, the most recent, maybe, There Be Monsters.
Yeah, the There Be Monsters was more of a return to form for me, similar to the Ruins of Mars, with sort of taking almost a popular, um, I don't want to use the word because it's kind of a bad word these days, but taking a popular conspiracy theory or urban legend like ruins on Mars,
Mm-hmm.
Martians. This is a story that's been told in some form or other in nonfiction in the world. There Be Monsters, I looked at like the Philadelphia experiment. I looked at some popular conspiracy theories around Nikola Tesla and like military sort of hardware testing, blah
Mm-hmm.
blah blah, sort of black ops, whatever. And all that stuff is just it's just so ripe for expansion. It's just like somebody's already had an amazing piece of imagination in creating some of these, connecting these dots, with the red string. And so to take that and then go and do a deeper dive and put your own spin on it, it's sort of what I did with There Be Monsters. I like to keep you on your toes, but I also like to give you what you want to at the end of the day.
I like the term expansion, expansion of an idea. Find something that
Yes.
works and do it again. It doesn't have to
Hmm.
all be brand new out of your brain, something that nobody else has done.
It's almost impossible to do that. I mean, if you
It,
can figure it out, more
it
power to
is.
you. But the best, a lot of the best stories are just playing on these things that have interested people already, and opening them wider and giving them a little bit more of it.
Now you've got, is it a series of shorter stories at least,
Yeah,
which
they're
would be
shorts.
the
Yeah.
one where you live? So
Yes.
what is that actually about?
So I grew up here in Port Townsend, which is where I live. It's worth a Google for your listeners. It's got a rich history. It's a Victorian seaport. It's got a rich history of trade, commerce. There's a dark side of the history having to do with Shanghaiing taking place. There's tunnels under the downtown where they used to use, that would lead from like the bar or the brothel out to the harbor. Um, and it's also sort of famous in paranormal circles for being haunted or having a high number of haunted houses. And then in addition to that, because of its position on the Olympic Peninsula, the United States Army in the late 18s, early 19s built a huge military
Fort Worton.
fortification out here. Yes, Fort Worden, which is just tons of hulking concrete bunkers and tunnels dug into the hillside and into the landscape. It's all very mysterious and sort of like lost city elements, which plays. It's probably where these things come from in my imagination. Growing up here, oh, I'm going to write a story about ruins on Mars. Well, I grew up around ruins, that are lost in the
Sure.
woods. Or There Be Monsters with like what happens if the military is experimenting and things go off the rails. Well, that's like we live in the heart of the military industrial complex of the Pacific Northwest out here. Most people don't know that. So I expanded on, I started to tell the stories that I had always told myself as a kid. Not there, it's a secret history of Port Townsend because they're not necessarily, there is bits of history mixed in for sure, But the folks at the Historical Society have kind of given me a hard time about folks walking in with my books and going like, okay, where is the house that has the witches and the secret altar? And they're like, no, 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 that's not, we'll tell you about the real, people that lived up on Morgan Hill, but they weren't witches to as far as we know. But I always used to, as a kid, I'd see a house or I'd hear a story about a place and I'd go like ask somebody about it, like what's the deal with this house? Is it really haunted? And they wouldn't have an answer for me that was satisfactory. So I'd sort of start making these stories up myself, like early, like the early seeds of becoming a storyteller right there. So when I moved back to town in 2017, I decided to start kind of putting some of those ideas down, and yeah, I started writing the series, and it started to do really well because a lot of people come here on vacation and they enjoy the place. They
Mhm.
have some kind of connection with it, and they feel what I felt, that there's something here that's interesting and worth investigating. So some folks that also felt that way were a group of filmmakers and producers out of Hollywood that decided to start a production company and base it here in Port Townsend. It's called the Port Townsend Film Studio. And they optioned the rights to the first secret. Actually, they optioned the rights to the whole Secret History series about a year ago. Oh, just over a year ago, and then hired me to write the screenplay. So that's something that's coming.
Wow,
Pre-production is
awesome.
supposed.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, that's something that's coming soon in 2025 is pre-production. So, if you don't want to wait to read the book, you can watch the movie.
There you go. So what do you have coming up next?
Well, I'm going to be pretty involved in the making of the Secret History film, which has a working title, The Maintenance Man. I'm going to be heavily involved in production because producers Mary Louise Gimmel, who has really taken me under her wing and mentored me quite a bit, she sort of feels like there's something like maybe my filmmaking past isn't quite done. Like I said, I wrote the screenplay, which was my first foray into that since college, and it was well received. So I've got a few other screenplay ideas, and I also announced some time ago that I was going to be resuming the Ruins of Mars series with a follow-up trilogy. So those are all competing for my attention right now, in addition to being the father of a 3-year-old.
Hey, that's pretty awesome. Good energy. Your books have good energy. I've actually listened to a chapter
Ah,
of your books, and I like the way it rolls.
all
So
right.
those of you out there, check him out, Dylan James Quarles. All right. And your books will be available on DurhamPublishing.com, their bookstore there, as well as everywhere else. It's not like you're hard to find. Um,
No.
and we'll get that too. We'll get that to our customers out here, people that listen. All right. Dylan James Quarles, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us today. And
Thank you for having me.
when stuff happens, get back a hold of me. We may have you back
I
on.
will. Yeah, I'll let you know for sure.
All right. Thank you much. I'm
Thanks.
Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights. I want to thank you for joining us for this few minutes today. And until next time, see you then.